we lean heavily on the Harvard Business School ROI report that came out last year, which was profound. I mean, it was profound for our space to show in hard dollars that there's a return on investment. For every dollar spent on caregiving support, it returns 3.6 times that in value. Like, that speaks for itself. And it's mostly driven by retention. And so we talk about the ROI data, and then we storytell, and then we are very happy to prove ourselves. We say to organizations all the time, if you have one employee on your team, if you have one, senior executive or colleague who is going through caregiving, let us support that one individual and let them tell you about the experience. We've done that for the largest companies out there. We've supported one employee, and it's resulted in, a full kind of rollout for the whole company. It's very powerful. It's very powerful for a company to hear from their own employee.
Did you know that in 2020, there were 53 million caregivers in the United States? And by 2025, this number is expected to grow to 62.5 million. 73% of these caregivers also have a job. They are called working caregivers, and they are invisible because they don't talk about their caregiving challenges. Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees, is a podcast that will show you how to support working caregivers. Join Selma Archer and Zack on the Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast as they show you how to support working caregivers.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever and whenever you are checking in with us. We thank you for coming to Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employee podcast. My name is Zack.
And I'm Selma Archer.
Selma Archer, how you doing today, Selma?
I'm well. Thank you.
You're also a little excited, aren't you?
I'm very excited about our guests. So yes, I'm holding myself down in my seat right now.
Listeners and viewers, from whether you're watching us or listening to us in your ears or watching us on YouTube, I got to tell you, Selma and I are a little giddy today because we've been talking about this individual for about 7 years. Selma and I have been talking about what we want to do when we grow up. And Lindsay's name has come up, and we are just so excited to introduce her. So we're going to get right to it. Lindsay Jurist-Rosner, hello and welcome to the show.
Hey, Zack. Hey, Selma. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor.
Woo.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, I know we know that you are in New York City, so this might be a little bit tough, but we always like to open up the show and ask you to share something that maybe our viewers and listeners don't know about where you live. So do you have a little tidbit for us?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I have anything too profound. I'm a new dog parent, and so that's kind of opened up a new New York City for me. Actually a very typical caregiving story. My mom passed away 8 years ago. My stepdad passed away in January. They had this beloved dog, and we were by my stepdad's bedside as he was passing, and people were saying, "What do we do about the dog and the dog and the dog?" My husband looked at me and he kind of nodded, and I said, We'll take the dog. So we flew back to New York City as dog owners, which changes the game totally. But it's a whole new New York, getting to visit dog parks, and we've gotten to know different neighbors within our building who we had never talked to. We know all the dogs. I'm out there walking the dog at 6 in the morning, 9 p.m. at night. So you see different types of crowds and people, and it's been a delight, just pure joy. So I don't know if that's a New York thing, but my thing is being a dog parent in New York is my new thing.
Awesome.
Oh, I love it. You got so many places to take dogs to in the city. I love that. I love that.
And I figured out the little cafes that you can bring the dog into. Yeah. Chacha Matcha is a little matcha spot, and I can bring the dog in, and they have dog treats, and they treat him well. And he loves going to, he's dragging me along to go there every day. So a little too much spend on the matchas these days, but it's for the dog.
All right, listeners, viewers, you've heard it first here from Lindsay. The New York City, contrary to what you might think, is a very dog-friendly city. Correct. I've been there many times, and I have 2 dogs of my own, Lindsay, and we're big dog lovers. For 38 years, my wife and I have been married. We've had dogs for 37 years, so we love it. What's the dog's name?
Dog's name is Pepper, which is a little confusing because he's all white. Some people keep telling me he should be Salt. But he's a Cavapoo. He's like a fancy designer dog that my
All right.
parents got.
All
So
right.
he's a joy.
Well, Pepper is lucky to have you guys, and you're lucky to have Pepper. And by the way,
Great.
I love to cook and grill, and there is white pepper out there, just so you know. So there
Great.
is. There you go.
That's
All
cool.
right, we got to jump into this, Lindsay. First of all, very sorry to hear about the passing of your father recently, and of course of your mother.
Yeah.
And we'll put links in our show notes, so you don't have to go into the entire caregiver story, but you have shared it many times in the media. But why don't you just briefly talk about your caregiver journey? And then if you could, how did that inspire you to create what you've created today with Wellthy?
Yeah. No, thank you for asking, Zach. The inspiration to start Wellthy was really based on my caregiving journey with my mom. My mom got diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, when I was a kid. She had the progressive kind, primary progressive. Many people who have MS have the kind of relapsing remitting kind. So for her, it was a kind of steady, gradual decline in mobility. Mine was sharp as a tack all the way through to the end. But it was a 28-year-long journey from the time she was diagnosed to when she passed. And it was so dang hard. And she was my world. She was my mom. She was my best friend. I'm the youngest child. I think people always think about caregivers as the oldest child. I'm the youngest. I have an older stepsister and an older sister. They were both kind of out of the house as my mom started to need more help. And so I sort of stepped into helping her more and more. And then after college, I moved home, lived at home for a while, helped her in my 20s, moved out, reached a point of kind of burnout, emotional, physical burnout in my mid-20s, moved out and helped her from afar. Many last-minute flights, hospitalizations, surgeries, special treatments. She was on hospice at the end. And it was, for me, it was really kind of a full-time second job. I know you both know this all too well, but, I didn't start my family and kind of that part of my life until she actually passed. And I went on, got married and had a kid and kind of took on that journey. But I worked full time. I took care of my mom, and that was really all I had bandwidth to do for so many years through my 20s and 30s. And yeah, it was really through that experience. I think for me, just slowly over time, recognizing just how many other people were dealing with their own version of my story. I always felt so kind of, I don't know, like I felt a sense of shame sometimes, or like I didn't really want to tell people or burden people with, and so I kept it to myself. And then once you realize just how many people are going through their own versions, of the caregiving journey, it really is stunning and eye-opening. And I just got obsessed with, gosh, this is the hardest thing I do, and here I am. I have a master's degree. English is my first language. It's expensive. I put my own savings toward various care for her. Like, how do other families do this? And as I started to dig into that question and recognize that it's a major source of bankruptcy and family fights and issues and just breaking the backs of Americans, and actually not even just Americans, but globally, I just got personally compelled to create a better experience for caregivers and really inspired to do that and set out on that journey in 2014.
But you took it to a whole other level. So just so you know, there are amazing caregiver advocates out there who previous caregivers, they wanted to bring some value and they struggle. They're trying to, be coaches or create, materials online. You took it to a whole other level. What was that spark? What was that inspiration to do that?
Yeah.
I think it's like you do what you know. I mean, I had gone to business school. I knew business. I knew tech. I don't know, if I had background in nonprofits, I probably would have started a nonprofit. I knew how to solve problems, and I only knew how to solve problems with business. It's like what I knew. So yeah. And I think it was during my time at Microsoft. I was working at Microsoft, and I remember my mom had a hospitalization and I was by her side, and I had to let my manager and team know. And I remember looking on the Microsoft benefits, because everybody talks about how amazing their benefits are. And I went to their benefits page and I was like, I wonder if there's something that could help me. And I put up care.com, and my mom and I were looking at it, and I was like, we don't really need to hire a caregiver. Like, that's not really relevant for us. Just that realization, like a company that's supposed to provide supportive benefits and supposedly great benefits had nothing for me. And that was also kind of a realization of like, that's an opportunity for companies to support their employees. So that was probably the other moment.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah.
So can we talk just a little bit briefly about Wellthy? We know that it's a care concierge service that you provide for caregivers and their families. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and what's involved?
Yeah, definitely. And Selma, actually, Wellthy has evolved even. So we do provide care concierge. That's kind of our core and original business. We have more recently gotten into doing more work in the childcare side and specifically backup care. So we now do administer backup care programs. And now we offer our support fully globally. So a lot of kind of innovation and evolution on our side. Other piece to mention is we did also just recently make an acquisition of a company called Patch Caregiving, which focuses on on-site and near-site backup childcare, which is just super innovative. So, but yeah, I'll talk to you about what Care Concierge does and maybe explain a little bit on the backup care side as well. Care Concierge is really about helping employees navigate and access care, but typically what comes along with navigation and access is affordability. So the biggest realization we had in the early days of Wellthy is not only did people need help finding the right care for their loved ones, but they needed help figuring out how to pay for that care. And so the affordability issue is huge in our space. And so it's navigation, it's access, it's affordability, and it's decision support. One of the other observations we've seen is just as you're navigating very critical decisions for a loved one, there really is very limited support for that. And so just to have a sounding board, is it the right time to think about hospice or palliative care? What are the pros and cons of doing that? Or is it, do we move mom into a more supportive living environment or bring care into the home? What are the different pros and cons of doing those different things? That decision support is another piece that really, is very challenging for families. And so the model we've built is a software enabled service. So we employ a lot of care coordinators. They're mostly master's level clinical social workers. I'm a huge fan of social workers. I think they're an underutilized workforce within the healthcare system. And so we basically provide personalized social work support to each family that we work with. But in addition to that social work support, we have an entire team of care advisors who are experts, subject matter experts. So we have people on our team who know Medicare inside and out, know Medicaid inside and out, know veterans benefits, right, inside and out. We have people on our team who all they do all day long is help families hire in-home care, source in-home care. We have a team of people, all they do is help families navigate a move into a facility. And so there's these experts on our team who really know these spaces very well and the resources and the options within those spaces. It's really providing kind of wraparound support and help to families. And the reality is listen, most employees, most families that we support come to us in a very reactive state. Typically, it's after there's been a fall diagnosis, progression in care needs. And almost everybody comes to us saying the same thing. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know where to start. And will you tell us what we need to be doing? And so that's really where we get to shine. Backup care is a bit of a different business. It's a little bit more transactional. It's satisfying kind of a need that's been around for decades where employers can cover the cost of some care days. So the idea is if you need to go to work, your caregiver calls out sick for your mom or your kiddo, you can't go to work and leave your loved one. And so your employer would cover the cost of care for that day to fill in. So it's filling in those care gap moments. And so we administer that program, the subsidy and the financial piece of it, as well as helping to set up the right care for that family.
So you provide services through the employer and the employee goes through the employer to access your services?
That's our primary business. We do have a direct-to-consumer business that we operate, and then we also do work with some health insurance and other types of carriers, of insurance carriers. But our employer business is our biggest, the main way that families engage with us.
Okay. Now you mentioned software, and technology has evolved to such a prominent place in the care space these days. So how do you balance the human aspect of caregiving with the technology? How do you balance that?
Yeah, great question, Saba. I mean, for us, it's all about the human first. Even still in an AI first world, when you're going through a crisis, when you're dealing with really difficult situations, speaking to a human who can really, you know, empathize and get it. I mean, there's nothing more powerful. And so we have a very much human first model, but we use tech for a number of reasons. One is, quality and consistency. We support and on any given day, tens of thousands of families across the year, close to hundreds of thousands of families. And as we're doing that, we need to make sure we maintain a high quality and consistent experience. And we do that through technology. So that's a very powerful use case. The other way is just to help our care team work at the top of their degrees, so they're not having to fill out a lot of forms and do a lot of mundane tasks. The highest value use of their time is their interaction with families and helping to get things done. And so how do we use tech to remove a lot of the other kind of mundane work that they might have to otherwise do? I'll give you an example. We found our care team was spending a lot of time crafting messages to families, where they're saying, "Dear Selma, hope you're doing okay. How's your mom today? Let's, hope you're hanging in there. Let's talk about all the things we were working on together." Writing that message, if you're not a writer, I don't know about you both, it takes me a while to write a good email. That's not a good use of their time, And so
Yeah.
we created a really cool little AI tool where our team can put things more in bullet point format and press a button, and that'll turn it into a lovely, warm, empathetic message that they don't have to spend time, crossing their T's and dotting their I's and thinking about how to frame things. It just gets done for them. And so there's a lot of really exciting tech and tools that we can use to enhance the experience for the families we serve and make our care team better.
Yeah, that's a fantastic example. Just wondering if there are any areas in your work where you feel that the human touch is just totally indispensable.
I really do think it's that human to human connection and that empathy. There might be a day, and that day might be coming soon, where some families are comfortable interacting with, an AI agent, in more of a chat GPT type of environment where they're asking questions and receiving help. That's certainly the case on the backup care side for us. But on the care concierge side, when somebody is coming to us, they're in typically a state of crisis. They're really stressed. They're really worried. They want to have that human interaction on the other side.
Thank you for walking us through everything that Wellthy does. I think maybe I was thinking a nonprofit might have been harder for you, but I think what you're doing is pretty hard. That's quite a bit of work you're doing, valuable work. It sounds almost like a benefit for an organization, right? So you're promoting yourself kind of like a benefit. And I love this campaign. By the way, HR folks out there who are promoting benefit selection period right now, you ought to make sure you use that outline that Lindsay just did, navigation, access, affordability, and decision support. That's a great outline. I really like that. It sounds like a no-brainer, but Lindsay, let me ask you, and we heard you speak, and we'll put a link for the National Alliance for Caregiving's Caregiver Nation. You were there and you met with a couple of people from the private sector, from Genworth and from Sedona, and you had a great conversation with them as employers. Your benefit sounds like a no-brainer, but I imagine you do sometimes come across some resistance. How do you position this as a value add, as a value proposition?
I mean, we've just seen employers increasingly become almost kind of public servants, like having to support their employees with all these different types of challenges and needs. And so the role of the employer has evolved significantly. And so I think when an employer is interested in providing caregiving support, but they struggle to get budget or kind of get the organization aligned, I think it's almost always just because there's competing priorities. It's not because an organization is saying this isn't a worthwhile investment or this isn't a good use of our time or team. It's instead because they're saying, listen, like, we're already doing this over here to support mental health, and we're already doing this over here to support whatever else. We need to focus there. So it's a bandwidth thing. I really do believe that.
Do you use any particular statistic? I know your own personal caregiver story is effective when you're talking to potential clients, but is there any particular statistics you want to share that you like to use?
Well, we lean heavily on the we were talking about Joe Fuller at the start. We lean heavily on the Harvard Business School ROI report that came out last year, which was profound. I mean, it was profound for our space to show in hard dollars that there's a return on investment for every dollar spent on caregiving support. It returns 3.6 times that in value. Like
Wow.
that speaks for itself, and it's mostly driven by retention. And so we talk about the ROI data, and then we storytell, to your point, Zach, and then we are very happy to prove ourselves. We say to organizations all the time, if you have one employee on your team, if you have one, senior executive or colleague who is going through caregiving, let us support that one individual and let them tell you about the experience. We've done that for the largest companies out there. We've supported one employee, and it's resulted in, a full kind of rollout for the whole company. It's very powerful. It's very powerful for a company to hear from their own employee,
I love that, Lindsay.
Yeah.
On occasion, I mentioned the caregiver advocates that I have so much respect for, but they struggle to try to get in front of HR departments. And they all ask me, Zach, how do I get, you're an HR guy, how do you get in front of HR? I go, it's not HR you need to get in front of. You need to get in front of the person you just mentioned, Lindsay. It's the person who is experiencing it and found some value in what you brought, and then they bring it to the organization. I love that. And hopefully it's a senior leader so everyone can be listening to it. But regardless of what position you're in, you're valuable to the organization. So
Totally.
thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Lindsay, recently, well, actually in 2024, you did a joint study with Harvard University that involved your client base on caregiving. And I was just wondering what motivated you to do that study. And then did you find out any surprises?
Yeah. It was such a cool journey. I had met Joe Fuller, who we did the report with. I'd met him back in probably 2018, 2017, before he wrote the 2019 Caring Company report, which was, such a seminal report for the space. And I remember talking to Joe back then and thanking him for his research and his work. And he said, the only thing missing is the ROI story. I want to tell that, I want to bring it to life and put real numbers around not just solving the problem, but what happens when you provide support. And so cut to a couple years later, randomly, we got approached from actually a team of PhD students at Stanford that were interested in studying our data to look at ROI. And so our data team worked with the PhD student and pulled a ton of data. So we have quantitative data, we have qualitative data, we have testimonials and feedback, we have cost data, we have utilization data. So pulled just tons of data on all of these clients. And then she really, for her course, it was almost her full-time job for a period of 6 months, maybe longer. She took all of this data and pulled it together into a really robust data set and started to pull some information out of it. Because she was a PhD student, she wasn't really planning to write a report. It was really just going to be for a project. And that's when I decided to try to put together the two teams. I approached Joe Fuller and I said, because we would have never had the bandwidth to kind of do that, data kind of normalization and, organization of all the different data sources. And she did it as her full-time job for a period of time. So I said to Joe, hey, we have this data set. Would you be? And he was thrilled. So he actually worked with the Stanford PhD student and some of the folks on his side to use that data she had gathered. And it was across 100 plus companies over 18 or 24 months. I can't remember, like a really significant real data set. And so Joe Fuller just leapt at he just was thrilled at the opportunity to be able to work with her and use that data set.
And did you guys see any results that were shocking or surprising to you?
Oh, it was profound. I mean, truly profound results. I mean, there was prior to the report, there really wasn't data available that showed that there was a return on investment if you provided caregiving support. Yeah. And we handed over the data, by the way, to Harvard and Stanford fully blindly. I mean, this was a third party, fully independent report. We had no control over what the results said. And so, obviously had a lot of trust, but we knew just from the from the qualitative. We knew from hearing people say, it changed my life. It allowed me to stay in my job. I didn't need a leave of absence, right? Like we've heard all of that over the years. So we knew there would be an ROI, but the profound piece was, the real ROI. And we think with very conservative assumptions that for every dollar invested, it returns 3.6 times that in value to the organization. That is a really significant return on investment, right? Like that's a no-brainer investment if you can return that much more in value. And so that was what was most surprising to me. I think maybe I was expecting a 2 times or, you return the money, but to have it be nearly 4 times, again, with very conservative assumptions, was very meaningful.
Was there any particular type of benefit or program that maybe jumped out that provided the most benefit?
Well, it was just Wellthy data. So the report was just based on our data. So it was only based on caregiving support offered by Wellthy within these companies. So to your point, it didn't factor in, maybe they offered a very cool policy or there was an ERG that also supported them. That wouldn't have been captured in our data set because all we had was our data. Okay. So it was really just strictly looking at if a company offered caregiving support through Wellthy, what would that look like? So it's not a kind of full environmental scan of the space, right?
Gotcha.
Hey, Lindsay, you're in the front row of seeing some companies doing some great stuff. Let's talk about them. Let's shout some out. Let's do it. I mean, yes. You're no better person than you. You're in the front row. Yeah. Share with us.
Yeah, this is where I always get in trouble and talk about companies I'm so excited about, and we don't, we haven't gotten formal permission, but I'll apologize later. We're seeing companies doing such exciting and really innovative and thoughtful things for their caregivers. Let me give you an example. We've been very proud to work with Cisco over the last several years. They became a client of ours probably in 2020, maybe 2021. And they're recognized as one of the best places to work in the country. They're really known for being a great employer. But I'll tell you what Cisco is doing in such a cool way, and we're partnering with them on this, is they came to us and really pushed us and said, listen, it's great that we can provide caregiving support in the US, but caregiving is a global issue. And our workforce is global. And we want to offer Wellthy in every country we operate in. And we said, sure, happy to do that. How many countries is it? They said 95.
Oh.
So January 1, 2026, we are launching with Cisco to support their employees outside of the US in 95 countries. Wow. How cool is that? So that's
very cool.
That's Cisco, which we love. Yeah. And other companies that we get a chance to work with, we just do such cool things. Hilton always comes to mind. They're always kind of a step ahead. They're always thinking so just beautifully about, their employees and their needs. And they push us. We launched with Hilton a couple of years ago, and they came to us a year or two later and said, listen, it's great that you're helping our employees with senior care challenges and complex kiddos and childcare. But, it's our parents of teens who are really struggling right now, especially teens who were really impacted by COVID and young adults. And we'd love to provide support to our parents of teens. What can we do together to support them? So we see these companies really listening and tuning in to the different, portions of their population. I'll give you another example. UPS is a client of ours through our acquisition of Patch Caregiving. And Patch provides on-site childcare, backup childcare for their distribution centers, for their sorting facilities. And UPS recognized, for them to be able to do the high volume of packages that they need to provide families with, all of the incredible, shipments and orders we all have every day. For those people to be able to show up, they need more childcare support. Oftentimes these employees rely on friends, family, and neighbors, and those types of caregivers can be less resilient. If grandma's taking care of the kid and grandma has an appointment, you don't have childcare for the day, right? And so, UPS took a bet on Patch Caregiving and now offers these care rooms, which is backup childcare, at I think about a dozen of their sorting facilities for for their staff. And so it's game changing. So we just see employers doing these really profoundly innovative things to not to check a box, not to say we offer caregiving support, to say what are the needs of our employees, what are the gaps, what are they struggling with, and how can we build the right support systems to allow them to show up and be their best self at work.
I'm with you, Lindsay. We like to, if we get into trouble with you, we're in trouble with you. Let's shout out Cisco, UPS, Hilton. I love it. Love it. We need more stories like that. I think it was Hilton the other day. I posted on LinkedIn. I think it was the CEO who is amazing. He talked about really tapping into people, and I think his term was whycation. Let's find out why people take vacations instead of where, and then he's figuring out benefits and needs around that. So it doesn't surprise me that a company like Hilton is working with you to really take care of the working caregivers. I'm excited to hear about that. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And let's hope the next time we have you on our show a year from now, you'll give us another like a dozen companies and examples.
Yes.
Well, I could give you, I feel like I've, you know, when you like talk about your kids and you forget to talk about a kid, I feel like I'm freaking out. I want to shout out Best Buy. I want to shout out so many of our clients, but
yeah, just looking out, you know, the next 5 to 10 years. And you mentioned earlier how Wellthy has evolved from just a care concierge service to so many other supportive areas for caregivers. Where do you see Wellthy in the next era evolving to meet the demands of the consistently growing caregiver population? You know, went from 53 million, now there's 63 million, 1 in every 4 people are working caregivers. Where do you see your organization evolving to meet the demands, the constant demands of caregiving?
Yeah, I love the question, Selma. And, you know, we have this vision of a care utopia, right? How do we create a world where everybody receives the care that they need, they can live with dignity and love without the stress, without the logistical headaches, and affordably, you know, be able to get the support they need and have that be offered to them in a way that doesn't break the bank. And so we think about how do we get to this care utopia? And there's a lot of exciting work that we're doing to kind of march in that direction. You know, first and foremost is just how do we get, you know, caregiving support as a mainstream. You know, it needs to be urgent. It needs to feel pressing for employers. And we want more awareness around the needs there. And so, you know, we're doing a lot of work, not just to build awareness of Wellthy, but just to build awareness overall of the caregiving crisis and the caregiving needs and the ways that employers can step in to support. So that's definitely a big area of opportunity. And then we're always working with our clients to innovate. You know, what are the pockets of your population that aren't receiving support? And how do we build, you know, unique programs to reach them? So maybe it's employees who are taking care of a parent with Alzheimer's dementia. That's a population that's incredibly stressed right now. The medications aren't, you know, maybe they can keep people stable for a period of time, but they're not reversing cognitive decline. And so I've been very excited and energized to see some great innovation there that we want to be able to bring forward to families. We get very energized around creating unique programs with our clients, you know, kind of customized offerings that really meet the needs of their different population. No two employer is the same. That's, you know, kind of the challenge and the opportunity, just like no two family is the same in terms of what the right support is for them. And so we really see a future where every employer is really thinking through what is the right caregiving support program and policy and overall package for my workforce. It's not going to be the same as what the company down the road offers. You know, it can't be, and really customizing that support. So yeah, those are just some of the things we're focused on.
Wow.
When Zack and I first started this work, we did all this research, we found out very quickly that a lot of the services that were being offered by employers were underutilized or not utilized at all. Number one, because they weren't communicated. But number two, because they weren't the services that employees needed. So it's great that you tap into the needs of, you know, the caregiver as opposed to offering these programs that are not going to be used because they're not needed. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Selma.
Yeah, we are definitely having you back in 12 months to get more updates from Wellthy and what you're doing. So much to appreciate you for on behalf of 63 million caregivers in this country. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for you and Wellthy, what you guys are doing. Shout out to Pepper. We learned a little bit about Pepper. Love that. Shout out to the youngest caregivers out there. I'm a baby of the family and a caregiver. You too, Selma, right or no?
No, I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle.
Okay. Yeah. And then one more important shout out, besides the employers that we talked about, was social workers, Lindsay.
Yes.
I ran a home care agency for 13 years in New Jersey with my wife. And I will tell you right now, social workers, we are absolutely indebted to them. They are underpaid and underappreciated. Well, overworked, underappreciated. I'm sure you pay them well, but I know social workers in the hospital settings and facilities, they are so valuable. I'm so glad to hear that you have them on your staff in addition to SMEs. You are doing some great things, Lindsay. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you
so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a good discussion, and I love the fact that you're raising awareness on the topic. So anything we can do to support.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to catch new episodes of Working Caregivers, the Invisible Employees podcast, every other Tuesday. Please also visit our website, invisibleemployeeadvocates.com, to subscribe to our newsletter, purchase our book, and learn more about how we can help you strengthen your workplace to become more supportive of working caregivers.